Well, hey there, and welcome back. If you're new here, I want to go ahead and introduce myself. I'm Jessica, and I'm the founder of thedomesticmusician.com. And I love sharing tips each and every week of how to teach music effectively in elementary music. Strategies and ideas that have worked for me and that I'm hoping to pass on to you that you can use in your classroom as well. So today, we're going to go ahead and jump right in. We're going to talk all about planning and putting on programs in elementary music. Now, everybody's teaching journey is different. You may have come into a classroom where a teacher has so many resources to work with, have left so many different programs. You have cabinets full of ideas. Maybe a teacher down the street has given you a bunch of their old programs. Maybe they're retiring or a situation like that. So you have a bunch of resources available to use. Or maybe you find yourself in the same situation I was in, where I had absolutely no resources or any programs to work with whatsoever. And if you find yourself in one of those two situations, either way, this training will be helpful to you because we're going to talk all about how to plan programs and how to put them on successfully, no matter what kind of school you're teaching at, no matter what resources you have available to you, okay? So let's jump right in. The first thing I want to tell you is, so you've been asked to do a program. Now what? What do? Your principal says, I want you to put on a program. Now, I do realize you've probably already put some on. You know, we're recording this in January, and so maybe you've already put some on in the fall. But if not, maybe you just started a teaching job in the middle of the school year. That's how I started my first teaching job. And so you're asked to put on programs and you have no idea where to start. How do you start? The first thing I want to talk about is, let's talk about the different types of programs or performances that you can put on. Okay. There are pretty much two basic types of performances in elementary school, that is. Okay, once you get into secondary music, there's a lot more, you know, because then you have choir, band, orchestra. But in elementary music, unless you have a strings program, or sometimes there's elementary band or elementary choir, you have performances and informances. Now, the first thing I want to say about that is it's up to you, but also the school you're at, your principal, what you guys agree to put on at your school. There's a couple of different ways you can go about this. First of all, you can pick different, like, okay, let's say for instance, 5th grade. Maybe you designate 5th grade every year is the grade you do a big program with every year. Maybe it's, I don't know, a 50s program. And every year, 5th grade, because you know, every year you're gonna have a different group of 5th graders, will do that particular program. Okay, so you know that's one of your big programs. Okay, and so let's say, okay, 5th grade's a big program. Let's say 1st grade is going to do a smaller something. Maybe you're doing a program with them as well, but I know we already passed December, but let's say you do a Cookies with Santa event and you have your 1st graders sing at that. And so maybe it won't be as big of a deal and you just do 2 to 3 songs. And we're going to talk about how to pick music in just a minute. And so what do you do with all the other grades? Well, there is something called informances, where basically it is inviting parents into your classroom to see what your students are working on in the actual classroom, okay? So it gets a little crowded. So maybe you don't have room for them in the classroom if your classroom's not that big. So you could just do one class at a time even. Now that gets a little tedious for you if you're not combining all the grades, like if you're not combining all 3rd grade. But you could just pick a couple songs where, okay, we're going to showcase these couple songs. We did this instrument thing I really want them to see. I want them to see us do this folk dance. And you're doing an informant. The parents are just watching you put on, and you can invite the principal in as well to perform what they've been working on in class. Now, I know some teachers don't like that idea. I've done a couple informances and I absolutely loved it because it wasn't so structured. It was just simply, come watch what we're doing in here. Watch what we're doing with music, and they're still performing, but just kind of a lower, what am I trying to say? Not as stressful of an event, I think I'm trying to say. So you got performances and informances. So how do you choose which one to do? And then we're going to talk about how to choose music. Well, first of all, like I said, you got to discuss it with your principal first of all, okay? Looking at a calendar and determine when are the PTA or PTO, no matter, you know, it's different where you live, when are those meetings? And then are you going to do programs with those? Are you, like I said, cookies with Santa? Are there any events where you're going to be picking a grade to perform at that? Now, if you're at a smaller school, like where I started, I only had 2 classes per grade level. So I would combine kindergarten and first, second and third and fourth and fifth. And that's another way of doing it. So first you're going to pick on the calendar, what is happening? Do I want to just do some smaller performances with an event? And also, by the way, that draws more people in, because if they're already there for something, or if they're coming for the performance, they might stay around for the PTA meeting, which is a principal's dream come true. So you figure out that. Then the next thing you're going to do is you're going to say, okay, am I going to combine any grades? Do I have room on the risers? And then you're going to say, okay, well, I'm doing, these 2 grades are doing big ones. I'm going to do smaller performances with these grades, and then these grades this year are just going to do informances. And there's nothing wrong with that. Now you're thinking probably, well, what about if I have parents who are saying, well, that's not fair. I didn't get to watch, my little Johnny perform this year. Well, you're still giving them an opportunity to come watch a performance. It may just be during the school day and not so much at night. But here's the thing, you can tell that parent, well, your child this year, maybe you can stagger it. You know what I mean? Like first grade does a big one, second grade smaller, third big, fourth smaller, fifth bigger. That way, every year you're hitting that same grade and they're moving on into the new grade, then they're doing a big one. The next year smaller, the next grade a bigger one. The possibilities are endless, okay? So first of all, it's up to you. You're the music teacher and you decide. I also know that it's up to your school, it's up to your principal, what they expect. And so I found that out quickly. We're going to talk about themes in a minute, but some of your principals are going to want these big, elaborate, musicals, and that's not always possible, okay? It's just not possible to prepare that many programs. And if you're doing that and you're very stressed out, then kudos to you. Yeah, but like I said, maybe your principal is just not familiar with the idea of an informants. Maybe they're not familiar with just doing like combining a performance with something else. So you're doing just a couple songs and then you're saying, you know what, I'm totally cool with doing big performances, but I don't want to do it every grade level. Let's just pick a couple and do big ones. Okay. So if you have any questions about that, please feel free to leave it in the comments and let's talk about it further because I'm moving kind of fast. The next thing I want to talk about is, okay, so I told you I wanted to talk about picking a theme. When I first started teaching, this was very confusing to me because I was like, how in the world do you just pick something random? I don't know, springtime, and you just pick, how do you pick, right? There's so many programs out there, and you're watching all these other music teachers do these performances, and you're like, I don't know how, the first thing about putting one on. I feel like in college, maybe where you went, but we didn't talk about programs a lot. I mean, you knew that expectation was there, but when you get your teaching job and you start putting on a performance, you're sitting there like, well, wait, I'm expected to put this on, and I'm not going to lie to you, being completely honest, right? Because if you know me, I keep it real. I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know the first thing about planning it, putting it on, where to buy the music. And remember, I came from a school that had nothing for me to use. So I didn't know the first thing about finding the music, putting it on. How do you come up with speaking parts? How do you assign the speaking parts for that matter? It stressed me out. So the first thing you do after you set the dates, okay, we've got our programs figured out. We know when they are on the calendar, who's doing the big ones, the small ones, the informants, all that. Now you're deciding, okay, now I know kind of who's doing what when. How do I know what themes to pick? Well, there's a couple ways to go about doing this. Back to the principal, okay? You could also talk to the classroom teachers. Are there themes that maybe you work on in 4th grade? What in 4th grade are you working on in social studies this year? Okay, maybe it is Martin Luther King. And so then you think, okay, I could do that. And it's kind of, cross-curricular and you're working on, and also, well, I'm kind of jumping ahead of myself. I'm going to hold on a minute, Jessica. What I was going to say is, so you figure out maybe what they're teaching and you can kind of plan a program around that. And then once you start working on the music, and you can find music at Music K8 is wonderful. That was my favorite place to find programs. There is West Music, which also sells band instruments and band, anywhere that sells sheet music, I would just go into local music stores and sometimes find programs. And the way I like to use programs is I would look through them And then I wouldn't necessarily go cover to cover. There's nothing wrong with doing that way. The people that write them that way, so you can do that if you need to. For me personally, I didn't always like all, a lot of times they come with 6 songs. So let's just say the program has 6 songs. I don't necessarily like every single song. Just listening to it, I was like, I kind of want a couple more upbeat songs, or I wanted to throw, what I was going to say earlier is throw a couple of speech pieces in there or poems that we would make musical. And so I would say, well, I don't want to make it too long. So which of these songs can we pull out so I can add my own things in? So if you are doing Martin Luther King, there are several poems about him, or someone could even come to the mic and read a speech by Martin Luther King, shorten it for elementary school students. And then there are several songs. And then once you pick the music or the speech piece or poem, then you can start adding movement in there. Then you pick students who have strong speaking voices and who are responsible to do speaking parts. You can even have tryouts for speaking parts. And then you can even add instruments, or maybe your particular program has like a dancing part in it. You can make it as large scale or small as you would like. The way I choose what to add into a program, excuse me, is based on what the particular program is about. Now, Martin Luther King program is a little more, the whole point of it is about Martin Luther King. So it's more historical, educational. If you are doing a program, let's say about, winter around the world, okay? You're doing different holidays, Christmas, Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, and then even winter songs from, around, and there's other ones from around the world. Well, that one's a little more upbeat, right? And so that one, obviously you think, okay, well, how can I showcase winter around the world? Well, you can do dances, show the different dances from that culture or holiday. Are there any instruments the kids could play during that could do like an instrument part? What speaking parts would be relevant? Are there any solos your students could sing? So you pick a theme, and then you decide what can be added to that theme based on what the program is about. Some of my programs, I had one that was a 50s kind of dance program. So I had dancers down on the floor doing swing dancing. I mean, it took practice. We had some after school practices, but I would always pick maybe like, a handful of students to do speaking parts. And then I would have some songs with harmony, and then also partner songs for the older kids, songs with rounds, if you want to get a little, more technical. And then we would also do some instrument parts. I had recorder one time. I've used boom whackers before, xylophones. There's if you're doing an upbeat program, you can have some kids come to the drums, even your classroom drums, and bring them in there. If you're doing a program, from a Hispanic culture, you can have some shakers. Make it as difficult or easy as you would like. If you're just comfortable with your students singing and they're singing, that's perfectly fine, okay? If you've ever heard me talk about anything, I'm really big on saying, don't compare yourself to other teachers. And I'm huge believer of that, because I was stuck in the comparison trap for several years, because I would be like, wait a second, this teacher over here's got every single kid on the risers playing the recorder part, and I'm over here, we haven't even started a recorder at my school because I don't have a budget and we have not one recorder. So I would what would happen? I'd instantly be like, oh my gosh, I'm not good enough. I'm not cut out for this. All my students are doing for their performance is singing. So what? They have a voice, right? And the whole point is to see them perform. So don't compare yourself, okay? It was a little side note, but I just need to throw that in there. Okay, so you've planned when you're doing what program, what grade's kind of doing it when, you've kind of picked some themes, you've maybe ordered a few programs, but I also want to tell you, look at what you already have available in your class. What have you already taught to your students that you could put into the actual program? Have you taught them any Martin Luther King songs? Then use that in your program. So you don't have to just buy programs. Use what you already have, especially if you're doing an informants, which we talked about earlier. Okay, so then ask around other music teachers. If you don't have a lot of resources available to you, then maybe you meet some music teachers at a workshop, or maybe you just know some other music teachers in your district who have been teaching a while. Say, hey, do you maybe have a program about, why am I having a hard time thinking of program themes off the top of my head, you guys? It's been a long day. Valentine's Day. Do you have any programs sitting around about Valentine's Day that you haven't used in a while that I could borrow? You never know. They probably do, right? They're like, oh, actually I do. I haven't used this one in about 5 years. Would you like to borrow it? You just never know. Just asking around and seeing who has what is another way to find programs. The next thing I wanted to say is if you are new to teaching or putting on programs, you're going to be nervous at first. Okay. The whole thing from planning it start to finish is a huge task. And so first of all, I always say people ask me this all the time, start 2 months before. So it's January while I'm talking to you right now. So if you have a program coming up at the end of March, start working on it now, because I'm talking about one of those big programs we talked about earlier. You're going to be practicing the music, and then you're going to, if you're adding in speaking parts, and then if you're going to add instrument parts, if you're going to have them memorize the music, which they should, and then you're going to have them, if you're doing any dancing parts, instrument parts, I think I've already said that. You know what I mean? To allow yourself enough time to get it planned from point A to point Z good. You don't want to be at the end of it rushing to get it all finished, because that will stress you out. You want your students 2 weeks ahead of the program, especially if you only see them once a week. That's not a lot of time. You want them 2 weeks before the program to have all the songs memorized, to feel confident, to be able to do as many dress rehearsals as you need or want to, and to feel like you can confidently just say, okay, today we're going to sing song number 3, or today we're going to do this speech piece. And remember, what are we adding to it? So you can just it's kind of review time, right? 2 weeks beforehand is just review time. It's not learning anymore, it's reviewing. I feel like there was one more thing I wanted to say. Oh yeah, I said you're going to be nervous, so take a deep breath. And if you allow yourself enough time to prepare, you won't be as nervous on the night of, all right? There was one more thing I wanted to say, and now, of course, I can't remember about programs. Oh, for the love. If I remember, I'll put it in the comments, you guys. I'm sorry. But yeah, so, oh, I know what it was. Okay, so how do you decide? I was going to talk about decorations and what your students wear real quick. That was what I was going to say. So ask for what to have your students wear. Just like we talked about when you pick a theme, that's how you decide what to add to the program. The same thing is when it comes to what they're wearing. I taught in a very, very, very low income school. I did not feel comfortable asking my students to go and buy a bunch of new clothes or to make their own costumes. And I didn't have any costumes. So we kept it really simple. We did a patriotic program or Veterans Day program, wear a red, white, or blue shirt. Or some of them didn't even have that in their closet. So just wear anything that has like a white stripe in it. We'll count it as white. If you're doing Halloween program, have them all wear a black shirt. You see where I'm going with this? Kind of just pick a color and pick like a clothing theme. It could even be as simple as, you know what? I want all the girls to just like wear dresses, and the boys, can you wear a dress shirt with pants? And maybe they don't have dress pants, so just wear a pair of jeans. It's up to you. I would keep it simple if I was you, but if you are all about doing costumes, that's totally fine. You may have one of those moms at your school that's all about it and loves to sew and just loves to make costumes for everyone, and that's great. So when it comes to decoration, I am, you guys, I've already said this, I got the music side of art side of art, not so much. I can't draw to save my life. So what I was going to say is find the art teacher or maybe another artsy teacher in your school to even just use bulletin board paper and to make a sign to hang up on the stage. And the kids can even help if it's snowflakes, make snowflakes to hang up. Keep it simple. That's my advice, is to keep it simple. I hope this helped you with how to plan a program and how to put it on. And I wanted to let you know real quick before we go that if you are new to teaching elementary music, or maybe you're about to start your first teaching job, or maybe you've been teaching elementary music for a while, but you feel like you're just still kind of not gaining the traction you hoped for, then I would love for you to join me at the free webinar coming up in February called How to Successfully Teach Elementary Music. Head to thedomesticmusician.com to sign up, and I hope to see you there. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and I will see you next week. Have a great day. Bye.